thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. We're on our, let's see, we're about 2 weeks into FY24 for PATH, so that's exciting. And why is it not letting me? There we go. So for today, we're going to talk a little bit about closing out FY23. There are still a few outstanding things that we need to wrap up. And then we'll discuss FY24 information as we move forward with the next year. And then the majority of what we'll be doing today, we're actually going to have some cohort discussions where we do breakout rooms later on after the majority of the call. And we'll meet with our specific cohorts that you all are interested in and kind of get a feel for how we want to plan out the year. So before we get started, it's hard to believe that summer is almost over and we're headed back to a new semester. If you have any welcome back events that you're planning for students, if you could share those in the chat, just to kind of see what fun things everybody has going on as we move into the fall semester. We'll take a few minutes to review those. Oh, ice cream social, very fun. Those are always popular. All right. Maybe everyone is still in summer mode and not ready to think about back to school things. All right, move on. So for FY23, as I mentioned before, you do still have some outstanding things to complete for us. One of those would be the Q4 report. Those are going to be due on July 30th. So just a couple more weeks to get those finished up. The report that you're going to be using is the same template that you've been using for the previous 3 quarters, and you can report right on that same template that you submitted to us for those quarters, so that it can show each quarter what you've been doing. You'll be sending that to the ICCB grant payments email address, just like you've done for the last 3 quarters. And just a reminder, we'll go through these slides fairly quickly because they are repeat from before, but just a reminder, as you're calculating your performance reporting numbers, make sure that you calculate for that 4th quarter, you're going to use Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4 enrollees, because that is cumulative information. So don't forget to use all 3 of those, or I'm sorry, all 4 of those. And then another reminder for FY23, the first 3 payments, of course, were automatic, and you should have received those quite some time ago. The 4th quarter, or the 4th payment, is based off of request, and that final due date for that would be no later than August 1st. So make sure that you send your payment request in before that date, and you can send that again to the ICCB grant payments email address. I know we've received some, but I think there are still some that are outstanding. And then the main thing that we wanted to talk about on the call this morning is that final supplemental report. This is the last piece to the FY23 grant year. It's a little bit different than the Q4 report. It's going to be due on August 30th. We did send the report template out via the listserv one day last week. If you didn't receive it, please let me know. I'm happy to share that again with you. And then it's also available on the ICCB PATH webpage if you look on our website. It's going to be similar to the quarterly report template that you've been using. There will be tabs within an Excel spreadsheet, and we'll go through each tab here in just a minute so that you're a little bit more familiar with that. And then again, you'll send the completed template to ICCB grant payments, And it is cumulative information for the entire FY23 PATH grant year. So the first tab is actually just a definitions page. We've included information. We do have the due date of August 30th, and then we have definitions of things that we're asking for throughout the report. We have definitions for credit and non-credit programs, what counts as an enrollment and a completion, incumbent workers, full-time and part-time retention, and then we also have a definition for directly receiving PATH funds. You know, any student very well could be receiving some sort of support through PATH, but then there are some students that are receiving direct funds, whether that be through a stipend, tuition assistance, loan balance forgiveness, those types of things. So that will help you to identify those folks. The next tab on the report is more program information, and it's called the Program Deliverables tab. And I had to break it up into two different slides because my screenshot was too large. At the top of the tab, we're asking for any programs that were either newly developed or that were expanded throughout the grant year. And again, you're going to be looking at July 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2023 for your information. So if you added any new programs, please give us the names of those as well as when they're planning to start. And then if you expanded any programs, we would like the name of that and then how you expanded it, whether you expanded by adding additional sections, maybe there was an increase in your lab space, an addition in classes, things like that. And then also on that tab, this is very similar to what you were using for your quarterly report. We're asking for successes and challenges that you saw throughout the grant year. And then we also would like for you to tell us 3 lessons that you learned during the year. You know, maybe it's lessons that you learned that you're going to carry forward to FY24, or maybe it's something that you want to make sure you don't do in FY24. We just thought this would be helpful to learn what you feel like was important and what you would like to keep going forward with or stopping. The next tab is more related to employer engagement. Again, looking at the July 1st through June 30th. We would like to know what types of employers you are engaged with, whether that be through working with them on curriculum development, maybe they're a clinical site, or maybe they're hiring your graduates once they get through the program. So we'd like to know the name of the employer location, what type of employer they are, whether they're nursing home, hospital, some type of a clinic, and then what the type of engagement is, and then the occupations that were hired, and then whether they were including those incumbent workers, and then how many students were hired. It looks like we have a question really fast. Let me see here. Please clarify final payment request is an email with the amount requested and Q4 financials attached sufficient documentation. Yes, that's fine. Make sure we don't have any other questions. Okay. So that's all the information we'd like to have for employer engagement. Then the next tab is for the student outcomes. The first tab that you'll see is for credit programs. Make sure that you look up at the top there to know which numbers we're looking for. So the tab for credit programs, this is going to be looking at the academic year for 2022-2023. So you're looking at summer of 22, fall of 22, and spring of 23. We would like to know what the program names are. We've given you 15 lines, but if you need to add more, please feel free to do that. Also include the zip code, what the total number of students enrolled was for each of those programs, the total number of students enrolled that are incumbent workers, the total number of students who directly received PATH funds, and then the number of completers for each of those programs. And keep in mind, this is for credit programs. Then we also have an additional tab for non-credit programs. This is a separate tab, the same information that we're asking as far as the program name, the zip code, the number of students enrolled, number of students that are incumbent workers directly receiving PATH funds, and then the number of completers. However, the one thing we do want to note, the dates that you'll be pulling numbers for the non-credit programs is a little bit different. So credit programs should typically run by the semester. So that's why we are looking at it by the semester for those. Non-credit programs you may have started throughout the grant period. So we want to make sure that those non-credit students are being counted from July 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2023. So definitely please pay attention to that and keep that in mind as you're pulling your numbers. Does anybody have any questions for the final report before I move on to the next thing?
I have a question. We
Okay.
have had some conflicting information as to whether or not we can include our summer, for instance, CNA program of July of 22. Where do we put those numbers if in fact we can be inclusive of them?
So they started the program July 1 and their CNAs.
So they would have started the program, they would have completed the program in July of 22. So at the beginning of this FY 23 grant.
Okay. So when did that's a credit program, correct? At your
Correct.
college. When was that considered the summer term of 2022?
Yes.
Okay, so then let me go back here too. So when you're looking at your credit programs up here, that would be
Yes.
your summer 2022 term. So you're going to include those numbers on that piece.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's where I'm putting those completers. Okay,
Correct.
got it. Thank you.
Sure. Are there other questions on the supplemental report? And as always, feel free to reach out to me if you have specific questions that you would prefer to talk offline. But we definitely, I want to make sure everybody's understanding. It looks like we have a question. So students who are enrolled in summer of 2023. So those students, if it's a credit program and they started in June, is it credit or is it non-credit? It's credit. So then those will actually be included in your FY24 grant year. That's a good question. I don't know. Is Whitney on the call? I'm not sure. You know what, Gloria?
Here's what we did before, which was, this is Rebecca. Here's what we did before. What Whitney told me to tell everybody to do is you could count them as enrolled, but they don't complete till the following year, so that you could increase your numbers this year of who you served by that's who they started, but then you count them when they're done. That's what she had told me before.
Okay.
So, but this is, I think we ought to check with her because this is what you talked about, summer term. So,
right.
So she'll have to have a ruling on that.
We had a brief conversation about that too early on last year, and it's like Rebecca said, you could do it that way if you wanted to. We had thought it was best to try and match up enrollments with completions in the same year as much as possible. You only get to count it once, obviously, but if they're completing in a year, then it'd be good to try and count the enrollments in that same year. So you have a better comprehensive picture of what happened that's accurate. Otherwise, it looks like the completions and the enrollments are off a little bit.
And I think that's what she had mentioned that before, that we could count starts and then you count completers in the next year. But that was before you did this supplemental report that sort of takes what Paul was talking about, is that your summer term could start in June, but it's still the summer term numbers. So, so you could clarify and send an email out to everybody.
Yeah, we're gonna count our summer term in fiscal 24 with our completers. We're not gonna count them now.
Okay.
It's just us.
Let's see, if completed after July 1st, they would go in as completers the next year. Programs that are 18 months long. So, and that is always, you are always going to be a little bit off with your completers because there are some programs that are going to be over the grant year. The nursing program, of course, is probably the one that sticks out the most. RNs, obviously, it's going to be a couple of years. So those are not going to match up. But let me have a conversation with Whitney about it too, just to make sure. We tried to match up these terms as far as collecting the credit and non-credit program numbers. We're trying to match it up with the data that you all submit to make it as easy as we can on you. But that when you get into those borders, that makes it a little bit more confusing. So let me clarify with Whitney. Actually, I think Whitney just jumped on the call. We'll give her a minute to get in. Hey, Whitney, can you hear us?
I can. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, so we have a question. We're talking about the credit and non-credit numbers for the final report. And there was some question on whether or not, how to count those folks that come in. So they started in June of 20. So they started in June, which would be FY23 support dollars. But then they actually it's just a summer program. So do they count that in FY23 or FY24 as far as enrollees?
So they're in summer classes right now. You're talking about the summer of 2023.
Right. But
So
they
those
started
would
in
be
June.
counted. Yep. So those would be counted for credit programs. Those would be counted in next year's, in 24's completions and enrollments.
So do they count the enrollment though in
23.
so they do go ahead and count the FY23 number then?
Nope. So for this, you will only count summer 2022 term, fall 2022 term, and spring 23 term.
Okay.
Because that is going to match what is reported in your annual submission.
Okay. Does that help everyone?
Even though they're being supported by the fiscal year
Mm-hmm.
$23, those summer students now, or the summer students back in June, would be counted in 24's completions.
So
Okay.
that would go for enrollments and completions, summer, fall, spring.
Yes.
Put the enrollments, right?
So even though the grant runs on a fiscal year, the reporting is going to run on your typical academic year.
So for the quarterly report, for the Q4 report, then do we include the enrollees for summer because they started summer already and that ends at the end of June?
You would only include
Because for Q4, we're supposed to report for enrollees
the current,
the
through
current quarter.
April through June.
So it would be April through June. Well, our EMS and our CNA classes start, we have summer classes, the basic nursing and basic EMS. So technically they would be enrolled for the summer because they start in
Right.
June, but they finish in July.
Yeah, so for the quarterly report, I think that would be fine, and we'll make those clarifications for the quarterly reports that come out moving forward.
Okay.
And just a reminder, again, the numbers that we're going to use that impact any sort of funding or that we're going to track your actual progress against the metric is the annual submission, the data that you're submitting through our research and policy study staff. So
Okay, for that's the A1. Okay.
Yep. And so the quarterly reporting just allowed us to keep track of kind of how folks were doing, right? Instead of waiting a full year to see how you were doing against your goal. That does allow for some nuances, right? And some misalignment between sort of the grant year, the grant term, and sort of how the reporting will fall. So don't worry so much about the quarter 4. I mean, we want you to report, but don't be getting in a tizzy about it. We really want to make sure that the numbers submitted as a supplemental final report are correct. We're going to match that with the A1 submission. And then for quarters moving forward, we will make those adjustments and make sure that it's clear about what you're actually reporting on and how that will align with the total A1 report in the following year. So we do understand there's a misalignment here, and that's just the nature of the fiscal and academic year not aligning. But yeah, so for quarter 4, you should capture those students enrolled during that quarter. So your Q1 through Q4 aren't necessarily going to align with your supplemental, right? The supplemental is reflective of the academic year.
Great, thank you, Whitney. Before we move on to the success story template, does anybody have any other additional questions on the final supplemental report? Okay. So the additional piece besides the supplemental report that we're asking for is the student success story. This will be also due on August 30th. If you've done this, if you work at all with WEI, this template will look very familiar because it's very similar to that. We're asking each college to turn in a success story for one student at least. If you have more than that, that's fantastic. The first page, this is a Word document, so you'll be able to type into it directly. The first page basically asks for some demographic information on the student, their name, what program they went through, of course, what the college name is, and then what background information the student might have as far as what they were doing previously. Were they working in a different field? Were they laid off? Were they right out of high school? And then what made them decide that they wanted to have a new career and why they chose the program that they did. And then what they were grateful for going through the experience, and then how the program assisted them. And then in addition to that, on the second page, we would like to know what their goal is after completion of the program, and if they've already completed the program, that's fine. If they did complete the program, whether or not they found employment and what they're doing. Include any credential information that they may have earned when they went through their program. And then if you could include a quote from them about how they feel that this is going to change their future, we would appreciate that, as well as contact information for the student and a picture. But please make sure that you do have consent and can share that with us. We are looking at using some of these success stories to develop some videos and some different marketing tools to promote the program and to show impact stories on how things have worked for students. And once you complete the template, you can email that to myself at the bottom. I will be resending this template. Thank you to Whitney. I didn't realize my email address was wrong on the template that I had sent last week through the listserv. So I will re-email this so that you have the corrected template. Let's see, question. If we chose to not directly support individual students through the PATH grant, how do you recommend we respond to the success story?
Question.
I think that, oh, where did it go? I think probably we can talk offline on that, Michelle, and see kind of what maybe how students were still supported through PATH and see what we can come up with that. So if Michelle, if you want to send me an email offline, we can talk about this specifically. Are there other questions on the success story? No? Okay, so we will move on then. So this is just a summary slide that you'll have of the upcoming FY23 dates that we still need to close out. Of course, as we mentioned before, the fourth quarter report is due on July 30th. The last day to submit that payment request is August 1st. And then the final supplemental report and the student success story are all due on August 30th. So just kind of keep it all in one place for you to refer back to. So now we'll move into FY24 information. There are new folks that have started working with PATH, so we wanted to kind of provide another overview of what exactly PATH was designed to do, so that you can continue to familiarize yourselves with this. Before I do that, I do have a poll. Let's see if I can make it work. Okay, can you all see the poll? Okay, good. So I want to make sure that we're providing technical assistance that is supportive to all of you. And so we're looking at how often you would like to hear from us individually on working with you, whether you think monthly would be most valuable, every other month, quarterly. We want to make sure that you know, your needs are met and you're being supported in the best way possible, but I also don't want to overburden you if, you know, I know a lot of you work with multiple different programs. So I wanted to see what your feelings were on that. So we'll take a few minutes. It looks like we're at about 50% responded. Give it just a little bit longer. We're almost at 90% of attendees, although I'm sure we may have multiple from the same colleges. And again, this is not going to be set in stone. This just kind of gives me an idea of what you feel would be most helpful. And of course, you're always welcome to reach out anytime that you have any questions or if you need help. We're certainly not limiting it to only certain times of the year. Okay, looks like we've got the majority here, so we'll end that. It looks like every other month is kind of the leader, followed by quarterly. So we'll definitely take that into consideration and plan accordingly going forward. All right, so just as a reminder, the PATH program was designed to create, support, and expand opportunities for people to go into nursing pathways and some other healthcare pathways. And then this was also done to help meet the shortages of workers in healthcare that have been exacerbated by COVID-19. The goal, of course, is to have an overall completion increase of 15% in healthcare programs. We don't have specific metrics, measurements from FY23 yet. Obviously, we're still finishing all of that up and we'll be gathering that. We hope to have more of that information for you in the October learning community, but hopefully we will see that 15% increase over the FY23 year. And then this 15% is going to be sustained over the next 4 years. It's not that it's another 15% increase each year. We just want to see sustained results. And of course, the ways that we're going to be trying to increase these workforce numbers is through training and education and also recruitment and retention. And of course, with completion targets, again, we're looking at that 15% growth over that first year, which was FY23. So now we're hoping to sustain that 15% growth. As of right now, it is reflective of credit-bearing programs from your annual submissions, but we are looking at ways to also incorporate those non-credit completions because they do also, you know, they do count in your numbers of growth. And then a completer is, a student's considered a completer when they complete an eligible PATH program. There could be duplicate completers if a student enrolled in one program and completed that, and then during the same grant year they completed a second program, then you would count both of those, even though they would be counted as two numbers. They did complete two programs. And then it also, as we talked a little bit ago, you could have completers that started in a completely different academic year, but then you're going to be counting them in the current grant year, because again, nursing is a great example of a program that is extended over more than one academic year. And of course, the target population for the PATH project to support students are those incumbent workers, new students that are entering nursing or healthcare pathways that have been identified as needing support, and then low income, first generation, and minority students are also included in that target population.
Wait, I have a question for you. Could you clarify? It's Rebecca.
Yeah.
Could you clarify the last one before this? So do you want us to count
Oops.
nurses or anybody who's in a 2-year program or an 18-month program? Do we count them every single year? I mean, so we not only count them when they start, but if it goes over another year, then you want us to essentially double count them so that you know they're in the next year. For example, the nurses that started last year, they're still in the program. So is X-ray tech and some other programs. So then do we count them both in the last year and count them again in 2024? Just need clarification.
Right. Yes. So if they're enrolled in the program, they're going to be counted as an enrollee. And then of course, when they complete the program, if it's in that grant year, then they'll be counted as a completer as well.
So you're going to count them twice for an enrollee and once for a completer. So
Potentially, yes. If they carry over, if they're in 2 different grant years or academic years, yes, they would be counted as an enrollee in FY23. But then if they're enrolled again in FY24, say for that second year of that nursing program, then yes, they'll be counted as an enrollee in FY24.
So you're going to have a lot of enrollees, but very few completers off of that, so, okay, well.
Okay, and then again, these are the prioritized programs for the PATH program. I'm not going to read all of those off. You can certainly refer back to them in the program design as well. But these are the 7 that are considered prioritized and are weighted a little bit more in the numbers. And then these are all eligible programs that can be counted towards that PATH support. And again, definitely not going to read all of those to you. This is a second page of an eligible programs. I will point out, if you remember during the, I think it was the previous learning community call, disease registry data management had been recently added to this list. And then since then, we've also added long-term care administration to the list as well. So new for the FY24 grant year, and again, we're gonna get a lot more in depth on this here shortly. So for the FY24 grant year, you were asked to select one cohort to participate in through the entire year. The 3 cohorts are competency-based education, which will be module-based through CBEN, apprenticeship cohort, which will be moderated by Dr. Lake, and then rural development cohort, which I'll work with you on those. These are the colleges that have chosen each cohort. I do have a few that I have not heard from yet, so please get those to me as quickly as you can so that we can get you in your cohort. The plan is, and we'll advance to the next slide, the plan is that we're going to be meeting 4 times during the fall semester and then 4 times during the spring semester. So in August and September, we'll be meeting virtually with just your specific cohort that you are involved with. Then on October 18th, we will be having the next PATH learning community, which will also be virtual. And it'll be the same format that we're doing today, where we have, just general information about the PATH program, and then we'll break off into breakout rooms and you'll meet with your cohort specifically. November, January, and February will all be meeting virtually with just your individual cohort. Then in March of 2024, we are looking at an in-person event, possibly kind of almost like maybe a conference format where we have different speakers that maybe we're all together for part of it. and then break out into specific cohorts as well. And then April 17th, we will have another Path Learning community that's held virtually, where we again have general information at the beginning of the session, and then we break out into the cohorts towards the end of the meeting. And I do have another poll for you. Again, we are looking at doing a March meeting that would be in person, but I know that is definitely getting into spring breaks and you know, a lot of different things. So I want to do another poll. If you could select what the best week of March would be for your colleges, so that we can take into account any spring breaks, that would be appreciated. So it's looks like we're not quite at 50% yet, but it's looking like the first week or the last week of March is maybe going to be the most helpful. We'll give it just a few more minutes. We're at 60%. Okay, so it looks like the week of March 4th or the week of March 25th are the most popular. So we'll definitely take that into consideration as we move forward and decide on a date, and there certainly will be more coming, but we do want you to know that we would like to try to have at least, you know, one meeting in person. And again, once we finish this call, we're going to be breaking out into our cohorts here in just a few minutes, and there will be a lot more individual discussion as far as you know, expectations and plans for the year and what you would like to get out of being in these cohorts. So for FY24, the payment information is very similar moving forward with this grant. The first payment will be processed upon the execution of the grant agreement. I do know that our fiscal department is working on all of those, so hopefully they'll be sent soon. You'll receive another payment in October of 2023, and then again in January 2024. And then the final payment will be the same as what it is for FY23, where you'll be requesting that final payment in before August 1st of 2024. And I wanted to share, like I said, I don't have any statistics or anything really for FY23 yet, as those are all still rolling in, but I did want to share some information from the grant applications that we saw for FY24. I wanted to share some of the innovative ideas that you all have. You're very creative and very innovative on ways to support your students, and it's really fun to read all of those ideas. And actually, I'm hoping that we can continue to share some of those either in learning communities or possibly even in the cohorts. Because I think they're beneficial to so many different colleges. So one of the things, one college was seeing a decrease in NCLEX pass rates. So they're hiring success coaches for nursing to specifically work with students to hopefully get those numbers back up. Another college is looking at doing a day in the life event where high school students go to healthcare facilities and see practitioners actually working in live environments. Another college is using an advisory board to engage area employers. Another college is hosting essential employability skills workshops. So those workshops range from professionalism to collaboration, various things that students will need once they become employees. A resource guide has been developed at another college with internal and external resources in the community and also directly in the college to help support those students. Oh, I've got I'll make a note for John Wood as far as where you would like to go. Thank you. Then there was another college that is doing a summer seminar that will help teach students what to expect as they move forward with their academic program and what the challenges will be during those you know, months to year or 2 years. Another college is making, they're developing a mentor program for nursing students where the nursing students will be assigned a specific faculty member to serve as a mentor as they go through the program. And then there were multiple, multiple ideas of WEI and PATH funding being braided together to best support students. So really fantastic job of working to think of ideas to support students. And then also in the grant applications, I thought I would share some different challenges that colleges are seeing. And it's definitely not, one or two colleges. This seems to be a theme throughout multiple applications. Clinical site shortages are difficult. Faculty recruitment challenges continue to be difficult for some colleges. Student recruitment and retention are becoming challenges for some colleges, as well as under enrollment of certain programs. And as I mentioned before, some of the colleges have seen decreased NCLEX pass rates that they're working to combat, and then shortages of classroom space so that you can meet capacity needs as best as you can. So, and again, some of these challenges also will carry over into the cohorts. So we're hoping to be able to find some resources that we can share during the cohort meetings that might address some of these challenges. And again, this is just a summary of what the dates will be for FY24. It's just kind of a quick slide you can cut out and put on your bulletin board or your calendar to show when reports are due, when the learning communities will be scheduled, as well as some of those payment information and final closeout pieces. And then again, the next learning community will be October 18th. We will hold it by Zoom again. We'll send an invite through the listserv when that's available. And then these are just different resources that we used in the call today and are good information and have access to those templates that you'll be using. And as always, if you have someone that you'd like to add to the listserv for PATH, please let me know. Send me an email with their name and their email address, and we'll get them added very quickly. And then also keep in mind to use the listserv to share ideas or information back and forth with each other. If you have a question that you want to put out to see what other colleges are doing, you're more than welcome to use the listserv as a resource for that. And here is our contact information for Whitney, Tasha, and myself if you have any questions. And I will ask does anyone have any questions relating to FY23 or FY24 that we didn't already address before we move into the cohorts?
This is Kathy Swinson from Illinois Eastern.
Yeah.
I'd just like to talk about the 15% increase target a little bit, make sure I understand where all the numbers are coming from. Okay, so for FY23 funding, that was based on FY20 data, correct?
For FY23, yes.
Your metric came from academic year 2020.
Okay, and so then for 24, it's coming from 2021.
The goal is the same. So your
Okay.
completion target for Illinois Eastern is 429. So we've
Okay.
identified a 15% growth from academic year 2020 was sort of the baseline. And that was the most recent data we had at the time during the proposal. And so
Okay.
15% growth off of that, which was about 429 completions. And we're just asking that you maintain that over these next several years. We would love growth in addition
Okay.
to, but it was really about this first year investment to really show that growth.
Okay, and that's where my concern is, because our FY23 numbers, FY20 was a fairly good year for completers for us. And then it really dipped in 21, started coming back in 22, and we're just, for 23 completers, we're about level with FY20. So we did not reach that goal. Because we just now got back to where we were for FY20. So I don't know if I should be concerned about that. You know, we're still trying to do things, of course, to increase enrollment in completers.
So the only thing that, I mean, obviously we want you to hit your completion target. Do remember that the baseline was just the credit programs, and you can meet your completion target with also non-credit completions as well, which is why the supplemental reporting is so important this year. I don't think, Kathy, there's going to be anything punitive that we're going to be doing if you don't meet your target, but your numbers will affect, right, future allocations. So that's just something to keep in mind. But we can continue to work with you to see how we can get to that point. Hopefully you're able to sort of stabilize enrollment and continue to grow.
Okay,
We
Thank
can talk.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I have opened up the breakout session room, so you should all be able to select the one that you would like to attend. For today's purposes, we have the competency-based education, which Whitney is going to kind of oversee the conversation with that, because we are still working on getting all of those modules completed and everything set up. We also have the apprenticeship cohort with Dr. Rebecca Lake, and then the rural development with myself. But before we do that, looks like we have a few more in the chat as far as those questions with the enrollments and that 15% increase. Candace, I don't know for sure. I don't have a specific date on when the grant agreements will be sent out. I know that fiscal is working on that. And let's see. Tiffany, it looks like, let's see, the new fiscal year funds. So the first payment will be received once we have an executed grant agreement, and those have not gone out yet, but they are retroactive to July 1. So you're welcome to start working on those now, and that will reflect back to July 1. Oh, sorry, Whitney, I didn't see your comment that we'll check on that. Okay. So if you all would like to select your breakout session, and we'll move into those. Once you have moved out of this room and you're finished up with your cohort, feel free to just log out of the call, and then I'll end everything at the very end. But thank you all for attending, and we look forward to the next call.
Hey, Carrie, do you want to go back to the slide that has the colleges and all the cohorts they selected, just in case they
Yeah, I can do that.
forgot or whatever, maybe? Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Can everyone see the?
I'm not seeing the links.
So all you have to do, so down in the bottom, if you kind of hover over your Zoom, Kathy, there's a little thing down at the bottom that says breakout rooms. It's a little square. If you hover over, if you click on that, it'll come up with the 3, and then you just click join.
Hey, Tasha, do you mind staying on? I'm going to go ahead and go into the rural health one. Do you mind staying on here in case anybody has any additional questions? It looks like almost everybody, I think almost everyone has moved.
There's there's only a few people. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Morning again on a smaller scale. All right, so can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. So really, I think for today, it's kind of more of just a brainstorming session to see, just some housekeeping things, and how we want to move forward for the semester, as well as the entire grant year. So we are planning on meeting 4 times in the fall semester and then 4 times in the spring semester, as I mentioned earlier. And really the main expectations for this, number one, are that the colleges do attend the cohort that you have signed up for, and then that active participation piece as well. A lot of this will be discussion and sharing, best practices or things that you all are seeing or that you're doing to try to kind of help alleviate issues or innovative ways that that you're solving problems. So, but for today, I think we'll just kind of feel free to unmute yourselves and kind of jump in whenever you would like to. One of the main things, of course, that we need to decide is a meeting time and date. The first meeting, we are looking at that August timeframe, which I know is busy because, you know, halfway through the month, you're headed back to school and things really start to pick up. You know, do you prefer middle of the month meetings? Do you want to try to stick to, you know, more end of the month, beginning of the month? We're very flexible. I just want to make sure that it works for everyone. With the learning communities, we typically stick around the middle of the month. So I don't know if you want to keep that format, just because that'll kind of stick in your mind that, hey, you know, we have a path meeting in the middle of the month. But like I said, whatever works for you all. And then again, the day of the week, and then what time of day you all prefer. What are everybody's thoughts?
I'll just say that I don't mind the middle of the month typically, except in August. Like that is going to be very, very difficult with
Sure.
in services, new faculty training, all of those sorts of things. So if I don't know if others feel the same way, I could do the end of the month, maybe once school is actually started. That would be easier for me for August, but otherwise the middle of the month is fine.
And I think December is going to be very similar, and January as well. Well, and May. Although, let's see, May we will not be meeting. May we're going to be will be done. The last cohort meeting that we'll have is actually going to be in April with that learning community. So, but I would say probably December and January are going to be the same. So I was going to say, Dr. Bridges, he mentioned that. I think that's probably a good idea. We could look at maybe the end of the month for August and January for sure. Would you prefer beginning or end of the month for December?
I'd prefer
has to be at the
beginning. This is
beginning.
Erica. Yeah, beginning.
Okay.
I agree with Jessica on most of this. So beginning for December and end for August. So
Okay. We will aim for that then. So for August and January, we'll do end of the month. For December, we'll do beginning of the month. And then the rest of them we'll try to get maybe that, what are we, about third weekend for the other remaining months. I know for myself, and I think probably multiple of you, Mondays and Fridays are nice to avoid, just to try to begin the week and wrap up the week. I was kind of thinking maybe more like Wednesdays to meet, but that again, I want to get feedback from all of you.
I'm sure there's not going to be a perfect day for us all. There's
No.
so many. I was just suggesting Monday or Friday because the other days seem to be always so full of meetings. So
Okay,
that's just mine.
that's a good point. I just, if we did Mondays, I worry about, you know, coming back from the weekend and kind of forgetting what your schedule looks like. But if everybody feels like, you know, that would not be a problem, we could look at Mondays. Looks like it looks like Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Wednesdays are good. It's
Wednesdays.
a lot of Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Here's a Monday or Wednesday.
I would go with the Tuesday, Wednesday too. Sorry. I like to talk. I hate the chat. I'm sorry. So I'm up for the Tuesday, Wednesday also.
Okay. It really looks like Tuesdays actually seem to be maybe a little more, or Wednesdays. All right. Why don't we try, I hate doing this because there's always someone that it, you know, I hate to not accommodate everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was trying to see what 2, 3. It actually does look like Wednesdays are maybe leading slightly from the days. So why don't we try let's try Wednesday, and then we can always reevaluate if we need to. Let's try for Wednesdays. And does anybody have preference on morning or afternoon? It looks like I've got one afternoon already. Any other thoughts? Afternoons, mornings? So far I have 4 morning and 2 afternoon. I should have done more polls. Looks like morning seems to be the majority. All right, let's try a Wednesday morning. And then again, we can always reevaluate this. I will get something set up for our first meeting. Again, we'll push that back a little bit in August so that we can get settled into the new semester. And then, you know, really the rest of the time, I really would like to just kind of discuss kind of what more of a roundtable as far as, you know, some specific topics that maybe you all are hoping to get information on, or that really seem to be a challenge or a struggle. And then how you want to structure some of this. Would you prefer it to be more of a roundtable discussion where we share different ideas that different colleges are using, or you know, we can always bring in some speakers, or, you know, have specific topics that we talk about and then maybe do roundtable towards the end of the meetings. I just want to make sure it's valuable for all of you. I know clinical site find shortages are an issue. Transportation is a huge issue with rural folks, both, you know, students getting to class as well as getting to those clinical sites. There's a lot of issues with student support as far as making sure, you know, that their basic needs are met so that they can even become, you know, they can get to class. So definitely please just kind of chime in and let me know things that you would like us to look at moving forward.
Carrie, I'm gonna interrupt really quick. I'm sorry. Can you allow me to share my screen in the other breakout room?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm not for sure. Hang on, I'm not sure how to do that with the breakout.
Make her a host, I think. That should
Yeah,
work.
Here,
for-
I changed everything to sharing simultaneously.
That should probably work.
Okay, let me know if that doesn't work.
Okay.
I may have to come back in the other room to make you a host because I'm not sure if I can do it from here. Okay, sorry about that. So any thoughts as far as what you're looking for, or what really seems to be a pain point or a problem that you're facing that we can try to get some extra resources on?
This is Erica. I don't know how, I've asked this question for a few months, and especially since we're in the rural kind of cohort, whatever we're calling ourselves, we have a pain point with students getting to clinic and getting to the college, because of course, transportation does not run from those places. So I'm wondering, and this is just to throw it out there, and we can talk about it at our next meeting, how are we reimbursing students? What are the requirements for that reimbursement? Things like that. And those are, you know, the financial people here at Blackhawk really want to know how to track that so that it's tracked correctly. And, you know, the best way to do that. So we don't have to answer it today, but that's something I want to throw out there. So.
Okay.
If you give them card, and when we talked about giving them cards too, but the question is, other institutions are saying you need to show us the need before we give you. Do you know what I'm saying? So I just would kind of like to get that information from this group before school starts or close to after school starts. Thanks, guys.
Okay, good. Maybe that's definitely something that we could add to that August meeting to have some folks that are already doing that and that are doing it well, and how that's all set up at your colleges. What else? Are you all, do you feel like your clinical sites are adequate to meet needs? Sort of, so,
Depends on the program.
sure.
And not for growth. That's where we're challenged. So we got all this money, right? Do all these grand things and grow, but you have those constraints. So how do you overcome those?
Also, in our area, specialty areas are difficult. We have supplemented with some virtual reality from a previous grant, but I think that's always a problem in the more rural areas.
I agree. And
Amy,
it's,
Our
sorry,
clinical sites are good presently, but again, if we get the predicted growth, or even go back to pre-COVID numbers, that makes it
oh, is everybody still there? Hello?
that definition of that for myself.
So a lot of our hospitals are rural access only. So we get good medical surgical experience, but when you get into things very specific to like obstetrics, pediatrics,
Right, surge, all that stuff. I got you.
Yeah.
I understand the ER numbers. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. So, yeah, we have the same issue.
we have a lot of psych here. I have to say a lot of places struggle with that. We have long-term, short-term psych down here, but we don't have any neurology or any of the higher end specialty areas.
Right, and we have the same issue and they have to have that for whatever their, requirements are to graduate and take their testing, whatever that may be, but I think that's really hard. And the hardest part for us, and I'm sure you all have that, is that rural areas don't have the care that they need from the professionals, and
They
yet
don't.
the students out there can't get the numbers that they need to take their NCLEX or whatever it may be.
Right. That's very difficult. I know, my background, of course, I came from healthcare and we were a critical access hospital in a rural area, and you might not see, you might have a patient come in that presents with a specific thing, but you might not see that again for a couple of months. I mean, and to then be a student, that makes it very difficult to try to meet those clinical needs. Does anyone feel like they have a good handle on clinical sites?
We have a lot of clinical sites. Our community is really good about letting our students come in. I think our challenge in the community or in our clinical sites is having the available nursing staff. There's a lot of travelers still, and not that they're not wonderful, but maybe they're not quite as engaged or invested in the facility that we're at to be able to help, guide the students through. So that makes it a little more challenging. Or they have a lot of new grads because the nurses aren't staying in that department or in the field very long to help with the clinical environment.
Interesting. That's a good point. So you have the site, it's just whether or not the staff is there to be able to fill those roles. Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to talk. You need to give me a time limit. Hold up the sign and say 2 more minutes, Erica. But I have a concern, and I moved to the state in January, so I'm new. But I spent 15 years up in Alaska, and when we would bring students in for clinical rotations from the bush, as we call it, the students would say, you know what, I don't want to go back. This is awesome, right? Because they'd get all that experience and they'd, think, and I'm wondering, could that taint our rural students if, as we've talked about with Amy, we need to rotate them into the town? Will they still go back? And that was a problem we had. And I didn't know if that is an Illinois problem also.
And It is for us because, as I said, we live down in the very bottom of the state, and Illinois is a long, skinny state. So we have a lot of state borders. So where we live, we have a lot of students hopping over to the larger hospitals that are in Indiana. And they're bigger hospitals, more experiences, higher pay, better benefits. And then the same if you hop over into Paducah, Kentucky, then you're able to work for some of the bigger hospital systems. Fortunately, a lot of these people kind of get it out of their system and migrate back home. But our younger students definitely are out seeking those bigger, more urban types of experiences.
I do think, again, coming from the being in healthcare rather than the education side, I think that one thing for rural folks, number one, if you have a tie to a rural area, you may be more likely to stay there if your family is there or whatever. But I do think too that, and this is not so much on the colleges as it is on the sites that are recruiting your students. I think that pointing out that maybe better, bigger is not always better. There are things to be said for being in a smaller environment where it's maybe more like a family atmosphere, or especially as a new grad going in, it's a little bit slower paced potentially to see some of those things and kind of ease into things a little bit more. So I think that those are opportunities that, and you could speak with your recruiting sites, but I think that those are opportunities that those facilities need to take to kind of sell themselves on why they should stick with the smaller environments rather than going to those larger facilities. Because there are definitely some pros to staying in a smaller area.
Oh, definitely. And I'm just, my feeling is maybe I need to put that on the website application, where are you from? Just a little bit of background, because that's not something, data analytics can pull from FAFSA or whatever it is, right? So not that it would change anything, but at least we could track as far as rural in our community with ICCB, we could kind of track, are we meeting that need? So, that's just, I don't know. I just need to figure it out, because if you're in this group, rural is kind of our place. And so how do you track what we're doing rurally, right? Can you say rurally?
Sure. That might be a good idea to include that in your demographic information, not only, for placement purposes after the fact, but maybe even there are definitely going to be needs that are coming up that are only specifically in rural areas that urban areas don't have to address. So that might be able to help you identify them a little bit more quickly. It looks like somebody has in the comments, as far as the clinical sites, limiting the number of students and increasing that regulation from 25 to 50% simulation. This is actually something that I had as well, that there are a lot of states that are using that 50% simulation. And of course, it's not the same as being with a real patient, but if that would allow to get more of that education in and some experience, I agree. I think that's something that, I don't know that necessarily our cohort is going to change policy, but if we could certainly look into that as far as, trying to maybe put a word in and try to see if that could be increased. I think that is one way to try to meet some of these problems. Kind of flipping a little bit, and we won't take, we're scheduled until 11:30, but I know everyone's busy and has things to do, so I certainly don't want to drag this out any more than we need to. But I did want to bring up as well, there are definitely the clinical site challenges. There are maybe even classroom shortages, things like that. But it seems to me that people in general and students as well are just really struggling themselves personally, which then carries over into their success in their program. And so I wanted to kind of talk with you all about that as well. That's not necessarily that's not only in rural areas, that's everywhere across the country and the world for that matter. But is that something that you all are seeing? It seems to me, I see a lot of mental health concerns with students, financial concerns, even with the support through PATH. You know, they may still be really struggling financially at home, or, you know, are you seeing other outside factors that are affecting that retention?
So for everybody, the cost of living has gone up, between gas and food, and our students, being rural, they do have transportation issues. And I have students that can commute 2 hours to attend classes. We have paid mileage, we have paid gas, we've paid electric bills, we've paid rent bills, among a few things. We've stipended them and reimbursed them for a number of other things that I know you guys are doing too. They still are attempting to work full-time while trying to go to school, even though we let them know that that is not a key to their success. They have to learn it the hard way, it seems. It's really difficult for them. And employers are not very willing to reduce their hours in a timely fashion. That's what I've seen. They talk to their employers and they say, well, you know, I have 8 weeks out already, I'm scheduled. And I can't reduce my hours until those 8 weeks have, come and gone. That's just some of the things that they're dealing with. And we have an in-house counselor that they can see for free, and it's utterly confidential. I don't know who's seeing them. We don't have conversations about their sessions and such. That has been a saving grace for us, for a lot of our students. That's just one element that we offer. And we've had special training too for the mental health. We participated in that. A number of staff, faculty, and management.
Good to know. Yeah, I know I've heard of a few others that I don't know that all colleges offer that, but it does seem like that counseling piece that is available to any student really does seem to be very needed and successful. It looks like this was an interesting when Amy mentioned that they lost a couple of students because of a medication refill shortage, which I know, not relating to this, but in some other things that I work with, I know that that's been an issue, not, kind of across the board. It's
Yes.
crazy to think of the shortages that we have in this country that you would never have thought would happen, and what it's affecting. So that's definitely something, maybe for the rest of you to, unfortunately, I don't know how we answer that other than maybe to try to, call around and see if there are other pharmacies that could potentially get access. But it's typically an organization wide or country wide when there are these shortages. So definitely students struggling is something that maybe we can try to come up with some resources for. And then also mentioned, and I was going to bring this up too, Elizabeth, thank you, the faculty shortages. It seems like it's becoming more and more difficult to find instructors, especially depending on what the program is or the topic. I don't know if that's something that everyone is seeing. Looks like I'm seeing head shaking. Yes. So, okay. Well, those are all definitely things that we can take a look at. And being rural, recruitment for faculty, I'm sure is difficult as well. It's easier when you're in the city to recruit someone. It's the same for doctors and everybody else as well. So, do you have a preference? Do you like the idea of having specific topics and having maybe a speaker or somebody sharing, specifically on that topic, and then doing a roundtable at the end of meetings? How would you like for things to be set up?
I feel like I'm monopolizing, but if there were topics sent out to us that we could then respond to and have something that we could, initially present saying, these are some of the great ideas that we could keep with us after the meeting, we could have that material available to us. But some of the best practices, maybe that's a possibility. Greatest challenges, and if you had solutions to those, how do you overcome those greatest challenges? Because we internally had to overcome some of the things that we had in place in order to utilize the funds. We got a lot of pushback. Oh, you can't do that. We've never done that. This grant doesn't allow for that. When in fact, there wasn't, there was an allowance for that. The uniqueness of the grant itself presented some difficulties in spending the monies internally. And I think you guys all had something along those lines. And how did you overcome that? And just a sidebar, I was having a discussion with another college. Do these funds cause them not to be able to have other elements of financial aid?
You mean if they're receiving PATH funds, can they not receive anything else?
No, if they're receiving others, do they allot the PATH funds first and then reserve some of the other funding for others who are not getting the PATH grant funds? That was a question that we were talking about.
Yeah, that was my question, and I would like to see if we're gonna do some kind of a guest speaker for definitely financial aid and a registrar to come in, because my understanding, it's been a little bit of a battle, is that FAFSA has to be filed. If the students are having any sort of aid from FAFSA or whatever, that is spent first, and then financial aid may, and I don't agree with that, consider the PATH grant. And so there was no process. I don't think it's their fault. It was just the process wasn't there. So there was a lot of confusion. And I would like to see that as soon as possible, if anybody else understands or has had that problem, so that we know how to spend the funds and give those funds to the students over the next year. And we can have clarity on that. The other thing I wanted to just add, and it's my soapbox, I really feel like when we look at our students and the challenges they face, and we talk about incumbent workers, somehow we need to not be, and this is just my opinion, we need to not count as much numbers and base that on our success. Because these students, and I think somebody already said it, sometimes they have jobs and, they have other things they're committed to. So do we extend their education? Do we give them an incomplete? Those are the kind of things to me that we're not figuring into this grant, because, we are counting how many completers we have. But students that are incumbent workers and have 4 kids and they're single, this is a big challenge. And so do we, take them out of the process? I mean, those are some things I think we need to talk about if the grant's going to continue. And that's just my soapbox opinion. So I'm sorry.
No, that's a good point. I see what you're saying. I mean, they would still be counted in as enrollments, even if they did extend their schooling. But I see what you're saying as far as that completer number, you'd be pushing that potentially out a longer amount of time. Because like you said, I mean, there are a lot of struggles that people go through, and they may need to take more time. Those are good things. Those are good things for us to hear. I know Tasha's on in our group as well. Those are good things for us to hear that we can, take back and talk about internally.
Yeah, because if we had another column that said students extended, whatever it may be, they would still be counted. But, when you either have to be a completer or not a completer, that's, that is not fair to the numbers. So that's my thing. And also the registrar. I really think we should get some financial aid registrar people in to clarify how we can supplement their funding with the PATH grant, so that it's clear. I agree with Ms. Buck. Sorry, I don't have your first name, but I agree with her. I mean, we need to have clarity for all of us.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can present to the whole group, because I'm sure this is not the only cohort that would be interested in that information. But yes, Erica, I agree with your soapbox, as you're calling it. And it's, since we are in education and this is a grant, there has to be some sort of obviously quantifiable metric that we can measure success against, right? But success comes in many forms, as you noted. So that's definitely something we can take back and have internal discussions about. So I appreciate your point.
Thank you, Tasha, and happy birthday. I see that behind you.
Oh, geez, thanks.
I wasn't gonna call you out. I didn't know whether.
I did not decorate my own office, by the way.
There's no shame in my game. You guys will learn that. I'll call you out, Tasha.
I like that, Erica. She gave herself away with the happy birthday banner. So it's looking like, I was just looking through the chat really quickly. I don't want to miss anything. So let's see, PATH is last dollar applied. Yes. I think that's somewhere in the FAQs. And of course, there are other ways that some colleges do support students, not necessarily even, it's not just with tuition reimbursement, right? It could be with childcare, it could be with that transportation piece. It could be, the gift cards to the grocery store to try to help supplement their grocery budget, those types of things. So those are certainly things that are not going to be factored in with financial aid that you could look at and supporting them. Let's see.
Gary, that's a good point. This is Candace, because that's one of the things that we were running in, cost of attendance. So, our PATH students, who receive full Pell, full MAP, things like that. And then they had PATH funds as well. Then the financial aid office would say, nope, they can't receive a stipend because they're over the cost of attendance. And, they received a refund or blah, blah, but our students were still struggling. Yes, they received a refund, but that was earmarked for other things. And the PATH stipend or education award, however we're packaging that, was definitely needed. So yeah, I would definitely be interested in seeing how some of the other colleges are doing that. We did work around it, of course. We just got creative with how we were able to disperse the funds, but it was definitely a challenge because there was no clear indication how we were supposed to disperse the funds. There was no rubric. We kind of had to just, do it. So.
Sure. Okay. And it looks like along these lines, we also have another college that's wanting to know how they track even what awards students are receiving and, all the different potential opportunities that they are getting, how to keep track of that. So I think this entire conversation with the financial aid piece is definitely something that Tasha and I can take back and we can talk about and try to find a good resource that could come in and present to everybody, because again, this is not just, targeted to rural folks. This is going to be across the board. So that's really great feedback. And we will certainly take that and see what we can do about that. And then as Tasha said, yes, we will get, once I know for sure, like I said, I'm waiting for a couple of others. Once we have the entire completed list of the cohorts, we'll certainly send that out because again, use this as a resource for yourselves as well. Once we kind of identify who's kind of in those rural areas and really struggling, absolutely reach out to your colleagues and see if there are ways that you can communicate with things back and forth. So we're certainly coming up close to the 11:30 hour. So or half an hour. I want to kind of wrap things up for now. I really appreciate the feedback today. I think there's been some really good discussion and some good identifying of areas that we could work with and try to get some more resources and maybe some fresh ideas. So we will take all of this back and we will plan for, again, August will be the first official meeting. This is kind of our kickoff discussion. So we'll look at towards the end of August as our first meeting and see what we can come up with. If you think of something in the meantime, absolutely send it to me. If you feel like you're doing really fantastically with your financial aid folks or, you know, this administration of awards, please reach out. We would be happy to, you know, have you present information that has worked well for you. So definitely let me know any of those types of things and we'll continue to move forward. But otherwise, I appreciate all of your time and hopefully you'll have a great rest of what's left of the summer and we'll move into August. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.